Okay, you guys. So, a young father is dead in his own driveway, shot down in cold blood just days before a court-ordered DNA test that could have blown up one of the biggest celebrity baby sagas on the internet. The DNA results that got posted right after his death? Baby, people are saying the paperwork might not even be real. Homicide detectives are quietly knocking on doors years later, asking questions about a certain somebody's inner circle. And the woman at the center of every single thread in this story is smiling on live stream like none of it is happening. Now, I need y'all to sit with this, because what we are about to walk through is not just messy. It is dark. It is layered. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why so many people believe that the death of Ronny Doe was not random at all. We are talking secret relationships, a child caught in the middle, a rapper in jail denying his own son, a manager breaking down timelines on camera, and a man who lost his life fighting for the truth. Y'all already know how we do it. Grab your tea, because this one is heavy. Now, before we get into the tragedy, we have to understand who Chrisean Rock really was before the fame, before the mansions, before the chaos. Because her story did not start on reality TV. It started in survival mode. Chrisean grew up in Maryland, one of 12 siblings, in a home that was anything but stable. Her father was incarcerated for over a decade of her childhood. Her mother battled addiction and worked constantly, which meant Chrisean and her brothers and sisters were largely raising each other. She has spoken about watching abuse inside her home as a little girl. She has spoken about being homeless as early as 9 years old, bouncing between one-bedroom apartments packed with family and sleeping in other people's houses, holding on to a promise that one day they would finally have a home of their own. She kept believing that promise at 9, at 12, at 15. And it kept not happening. But here is the thing about Chrisean Rock that a lot of people forget. She was gifted, genuinely gifted. Track and field was her world. She trained at Santa Monica in California. She ran for 2 years, and she was a beast on that track. Coaches believed in her. Teammates looked up to her. She was the girl who had nothing and outworked everybody. She said it herself. Track is where she released all of her anxiety, and what she came from is something people would never expect just by looking at her. She was a young woman with a real shot at a future that had nothing to do with drama, nothing to do with the internet, nothing to do with any man. And that matters, because everything that happens later in this story hits different when you remember that this was a girl who almost made it out clean. Now, during those high school years, while Chrisean was building her track career, she started dating a young man from her school. His name was Ronny. And according to Ronny himself, the two of them were together on and off for 5 years, from 2017 all the way to about 2022. They went to Arundel High School together in Arundel County, Maryland. They had homeroom together their senior year. Ronny described Chrisean as photogenic, popular, a track star, the kind of girl everybody knew. One thing led to another, like young love does, and they became each other's person long before the cameras ever showed up. Keep that timeline locked in your head, y'all. 2017 to 2022. 5 years. Because that timeline is about to collide with everything. In 2020, while Chrisean was recovering from a car accident, a friend encouraged her to audition for Blueface reality series, The Blue Girls Club. She got selected. She moved into his mansion, competing with a house full of women for the rapper's attention, and baby, that is where the girl from the track started disappearing and the character the world now knows started forming. During filming, Chrisean got into a physical altercation with Blueface baby mother, Jaden Alexis, and that is how she lost her front tooth. She was later signed to Blueface label, Blueface LLC, and not long after that, the two of them were in a full-blown romantic relationship that played out in front of the entire internet. In January 2023, Chrisean announced her pregnancy. On September 3, 2023, she gave birth to a baby boy, Chrisean Jesus Porter, who the world calls Junior. And the world assumed, because Chrisean said so, that the father was Blueface. Now, here is where the story stops being gossip and starts being something else entirely. Because there was one man who never accepted that story. Ronny, the high school boyfriend. The 5 years on and off. And Ronny was not quiet about it. He sat down for interviews and said clearly, on camera, that he believed Chrisean Jr. was his son. He said he was there. He said he was with Chrisean when her water broke. He said he saw that baby when he came out of the hospital. And when he was pressed on it, When the interviewer tried to move to the next question, Ronny doubled down with a line that honestly gave me chills. He said, "I know who cut the umbilical cord." Now y'all, think about that. That is not a man guessing. That is not a man chasing a check. That is a man planting a flag and saying, "I was in that room." And listen, I know what some of y'all are thinking, because it is the first thing people said when Ronny started speaking up. Maybe this is just a bitter ex-boyfriend. Maybe he saw Chrisean Rock get famous, saw the money, saw the platform, and decided to leech onto her name. That is a fair question, and I am going to ask it the same way the streets asked it. But Ronny answered that question before anybody could finish asking it. He said, on camera, that he did not want Chrisean back. He was not tripping off her. He was not trying to rekindle anything. His exact position was simple. If that is my son, I am going to step up, and if he is not my son, I will close this chapter and move forward with my life. He said, I am a passionate man that wants to be there for his son. My mother raised a man. Now, whatever you end up believing by the end of this video, I need you to hold on to the fact that those were his words while he was still alive. Because Ronny was not just talking. He was moving legally. He was pushing for a court-ordered paternity test, and he was telling people that within 4 to 6 weeks, Chrisean was going to be required by the court to take one. And according to Ronny, Chrisean was doing everything in her power to stop that from happening. He claimed she was trying to get charges put on him. He claimed the strategy was to get him locked up, because if the man requesting the paternity test is sitting in a jail cell, the court has nobody to answer to. He said it plain. If I am in jail, who is going to request the paternity? Now, whether that legal theory was right or wrong almost does not matter. What matters is that Ronny believed, with his whole chest, that forces around Chrisean Rock were working to keep that DNA test from ever happening. And here is why Ronny said he was fighting so hard. And this is the part of the story that genuinely breaks my heart, y'all. Ronny said his urgency was never about money and never about clout. He said it was about that baby's health. According to Ronny, Junior was born with a hernia, and it was his understanding that medical professionals at the time of the birth stated the child would need ongoing treatment, possibly surgery, possibly injections, in order to develop properly. And Ronny said that from the outside looking in, he watched that baby from the day he was born to the present, and he did not believe that child's health was being addressed the way it needed to be. He said, and I want y'all to really hear this, he is a human at the end of the day, not an object, and I feel like he has been treated like an object. He has not had the unconditional love that he deserves since he has been on this earth. Now, I am not a doctor, and I am not going to sit here and diagnose anybody's child. But I am going to tell you what the internet has watched with its own eyes, because Chrisean Rock documents nearly every moment of her life on livestream, and the clips are out there for anybody to see. In a recent stream, Chrisean explained that even though Junior is around 3 years old now, he does not eat regular solid food. She still blends his food up for him at home. And in another clip, when she is out at a restaurant with the baby, he is crying, he is biting, and he does not look like what most people picture when they picture a typical, thriving 3-year-old. And y'all, the most disturbing part, the part that had the entire internet clutching their pearls, is that at around 3 years old, that baby still does not appear to be walking in the footage Chrisean herself posts. She is carrying him everywhere. He is on her hip in every clip. And this is where I have to give y'all some real information, because a clip started circulating of a woman breaking down the difference between 2 medical conditions, and it is important. Fetal alcohol syndrome is caused by alcohol exposure during pregnancy. It is not genetic. It is environmental. It is preventable. Children with that condition can have distinct facial features, growth problems, and cognitive and behavioral impairments. Now compare that to something like Criean Rock syndrome, which is a genetic chromosomal deletion that happens randomly. 2 completely different things, and people online confuse them constantly. Why does this matter? Because during Chrisean's pregnancy with Junior, the entire world watched her have public meltdown after public meltdown on camera, and there were clips circulating that people believe showed her drinking and smoking while carrying that child. One person close to the situation even said to her, on camera, "You were drinking while you were pregnant. You caused this. Shame on you." I am not confirming anything. I am telling you what was said and what the internet saw. So when Ronny said he could not sit back and watch that child be neglected, you start to understand exactly what he was looking at. Now, let me tell y'all about the moment everything came to a head, because this is the incident that everybody points to when they talk about the final chapter of Ronny Doe's life. Ronny pulled up on Chrisean at a mall while she was out in public with Junior. He filmed the whole encounter himself. In the footage, you can hear him saying, "That is my son," while Chrisean and the people around her are screaming back at him, calling him weird, telling him nobody is stopping him, and threatening to call the police. Voices are raised. Fingers are pointing. It is chaos in the middle of a public mall, with that baby right there in the middle of it. And here is the detail that matters more than anything else in that clip. There was a court date already on the calendar. That mall confrontation was not the end of something. It was the beginning of a countdown. Because according to the timeline that Blueface's own manager, Wack 100, later laid out in detail, here is how the final week of Ronny Doe's life actually went down. After that mall incident, Chrisean pressed charges on Ronny. That created a court date set for Friday. Now Ronny, according to Wack, was not scared of that court date at all. He was actually looking forward to it. He told people, on Monday of that week, that once they were standing in front of a judge on Friday, he was going to have Chrisean served with a DNA subpoena right there in the courtroom. His words, essentially, were that she was not smarter than him, and once they were both legally required to be in the same room, the paternity question was finally going to get answered. That court date was set for Friday. Ronny never made it to Friday. On Wednesday night, 2 days before he was going to force that DNA test in front of a judge, Ronny Doe was shot and killed in his own driveway. Y'all, I had to pause when I first read that timeline. Monday, he announces his plan. Wednesday night, he is gone. Friday, the courtroom sits empty. Now, let me give you the official account, because I always want to be fair and give y'all the facts as they were reported. On February 3rd, around 7:10 in the evening, officers responded to reports of multiple gunshots near Severn Tree Boulevard and Sea Pine Circle in Severn, Maryland. When they arrived, they found a 24-year-old man, Karen McCoy, known to everybody as Ronny Doe, lying on the ground in front of a home with visible gunshot wounds. Police said from the very beginning that they believed it was a targeted shooting. Not a robbery gone wrong. Not random. Targeted. He was shot multiple times. Some accounts from people in the neighborhood claimed it was as many as 10 times, and claimed that nobody came to check on him for at least 10 minutes. Meaning if there was ever a window where his life could have been saved, it closed before anybody even reached him. And just like that, a 24-year-old father, or possible father, was gone, and every question he was fighting to answer died with him. Now, if the timeline was all we had, this would already be one of the most chilling stories on the internet. But baby, the aftermath is where the eyebrows really go up. Because just 2 days after Ronny Doe was killed, on February 5th, Chrisean Rock posted paternity test results to her son's Instagram account. The results, which were dated back in 2023, confirmed that Blueface was the biological father of Junior. And immediately, the internet said, wait a minute. Hold on. Why now? This man spent his final months publicly demanding a DNA test. He loses his life 2 days before a court date that would have forced one, and less than 48 hours after his death, results suddenly appear saying the case is closed? Y'all, the timing alone had people sick to their stomachs. And I want to know what you think about that timing, so drop it in the comments, because we are going to talk about it. But it gets deeper, because people did not just question the timing. They questioned the document itself. Internet sleuths zoomed in on the paperwork Chrisean posted and started pointing at the reference numbers, at the formatting, at details they claimed did not add up, and a wave of people came to the conclusion that the test results she posted may have been fabricated. A forgery. Now, I cannot sit here and tell you definitively whether that document was real or fake. What I can tell you is that the suspicion was loud enough and specific enough that to this day, there is a whole corner of the internet that does not believe Blueface has ever been confirmed as that child's biological father by a test anybody trusts. And here is the detail that makes it even messier. According to Wack 100, Blueface himself has asked to see real paternity confirmation, and every single time he asks, Chrisean ignores him. The man she insists is the father cannot get proof either. Make that make sense. And then came the interviews. Oh, y'all, the interviews. Because after Ronny's death, several people sat down with Jason Lee, and the things that were said, and more importantly the things that were not said, set the internet on fire. First up was Chrisean's own sister. When she was asked directly about Ronny, about the man who had been claiming to be Junior's father, she confirmed that she knew him personally. She said, I fed that boy. She described him almost like family. She said that little boy really loved Chrisean. But when she was asked how he ended up getting killed, whether it was street stuff or something random, this woman went silent. And then she said something that I have replayed in my head more times than I can count. She said, I cannot even speak on it, because if I was to speak on it, it would not look too good for certain people that we know. She said, I am not the police, but I will just leave it at that. Y'all, her own sister, sitting across from Jason Lee, saying that telling the truth about Ronny Doe's death would make certain people we know look bad. And then, almost as if she could not help herself, she laid out the sequence in the most chilling way possible. She said, he ran up on Chrisean when she was out in public. Then he had a paternity test coming up. Then it was all online. And then it was, her words, pow pow pow. No paternity test. Rest in peace. Now, she could have said 1,000 different things in that chair. She chose to draw a straight line from the paternity fight to the gunfire. On camera. And then Chrisean sat in that same chair. And when she was confronted with the fact that her own sister had insinuated she had something to do with Ronny's death, her response was not grief. It was not outrage at an unfair accusation. She laughed it off, said her sister's interview must have been boring if that was the only clip that went viral, and then she gave her own version of events. And her version, y'all, was that Ronny ran himself into a grave. Those were her words. She said when she cut Ronny off, she started seeing a different side of him. She said he wanted to clout chase, that he did paid interviews, that he tried to push his music, that he saw how Blueface ran a circus and tried to run his own. And then, she said, he ran himself into a grave that had nothing to do with me. She also floated the idea that he was already beefing with people in the streets, implying his death had street explanations. But then, and this is the part that stopped me, in the very same conversation, she said something almost tender. She admitted that Ronny came from a real good family, that his mother, grandmother, sisters, and aunts would have worshipped her child because he was the only boy in that bloodline. She said, and I quote, it would have been better off having a baby with him than Blue, to be honest. And then, in the very next breath, she insisted Ronny knew it was not his baby and was just tripping. So which is it? You cannot say a man would have been the better father of your child and that he knew the child was not his in the same interview and expect people not to notice. Now, let us talk about Blueface, because the man Chrisean swears is Junior's father has been just as busy distancing himself from that child as Ronny was fighting to claim him. Blueface sat down and said, plainly, that as long as he has known Chrisean, she has been involved with Ronny. He said she was with Ronny on his birthday. He claimed Chrisean had been pregnant by Ronny before, had an abortion, and that Ronny believed that is when Junior was conceived. Blueface's exact framing was that the side knows more than the main, meaning Ronny, as the other man, would know the real timeline better than he ever could. And when it comes to Junior, Blueface has been adamant. He does not believe that is his son. The man at the center of the paternity test Chrisean posted is the same man telling the world the child is not his. You cannot script this, y'all. Well, actually, apparently somebody can script a paternity test, but that is a whole other conversation. But Blueface did not stop at paternity. He dropped something else in that interview that sent a chill through everybody watching. He said that on the day Ronny died, Ronny and Chrisean had been in contact. He called her. They talked. And Blueface, choosing his words carefully but not that carefully, reminded everybody that in his experience, Chrisean Rock is, his words, a setup artist. He said she is known for giving out people's addresses in the spur of the moment, that she is impulsive, that this is her pattern. And then he connected the dots out loud. As far as Ronny calling her and them talking the night he died, that is the red flag. Now, Blueface is not a detective. Blueface has his own chaos and his own motives. But when a man who was inside that house, inside that relationship, tells you the woman is known for handing out addresses and that the dead man called her the night he was killed, you do not just scroll past that. And y'all, it does not stop there. Because there is a clip of Chrisean from before Ronny's death where she talks about looking at Ronny and telling him, it is crazy because you are going to die before I die. She said she just felt it. She said you can feel when somebody is about to die, and when Ronny was doing that weird stuff, she told him he was going to die, and then he ended up dying. She insists it was not a wish, that it was discernment, a gift. And maybe that is all it was. But then there is another clip. A clip where Chrisean is being interviewed about modeling, a totally innocent question, and she starts rambling and says, "After I killed," and then she catches herself and redirects to a story about her ex's brother catching a murder charge that he later beat with a self-defense claim. The internet froze that frame, y'all. People have replayed that clip frame by frame, asking what exactly was about to come out of her mouth. A slip of the tongue? A guilty conscience? I am not going to tell you what to think. I am going to tell you the clip exists and millions of people have watched it. Now, here is the most recent development, and this is the part that tells you this story is nowhere near over. A man who lives close to where Ronny was killed recently came forward online and said that homicide detectives knocked on his door. Not a phone call, not a letter. Detectives at his house, wanting to schedule a sit-down to question him about the Ronny Doe investigation and specifically about his association with Chrisean Rock. And this man had the same question everybody else has. Ronny has been gone for well over a year, closer to 2. Why now? Why are detectives just now knocking on doors? And then he floated his own theory on camera, and I am going to let you sit with it the same way I had to. He said, either they are just now getting around to investigating, or somebody is about to go down and they are building the case. He said, your girl might be in trouble. Now, here is where it gets even stranger, because this is the same man who appears in another video claiming that Blueface owes him $100,000. He is on camera demanding his money, referencing the DNA test situation, telling Blueface he better have that 100 bands. And the internet did what the internet does. They started asking whether this man was just a neighbor or whether he was something else entirely. $100,000 is a very specific number, y'all. And I will just say this. When a man connected to the neighborhood of a murder starts publicly demanding 6 figures from a rapper connected to the woman at the center of it, and then homicide detectives show up at his door, every single one of those dots is going to get connected eventually, one way or another. And while all of this is unfolding, while detectives are knocking and the internet is dissecting every frame of every clip, Chrisean Rock is on live stream telling everybody that none of it has anything to do with her. She says Ronny's death has nothing to do with her. She says he made her life about him because he needed money, because he was desperate. She says he was high the whole time. He was claiming Junior was his son. Perks, Molly, lean, drinking, her words. She says his own family was not holding him accountable, that nobody was trying to save Ronny before he died. She even accused his family of trafficking drugs through his grandmother's basement. And then she told the story of investigators approaching her, saying she was at the gym when she got the call, that she told them to come in, that they told her, "We know you did not do it. We have his phone." And she said, "Record it all, because y'all need to find out who really killed that man." She said when Ronny died, she had no feelings left in her body for him, because in her words, that person was trying to kill her before he left, trying to diminish her character, trying to clout chase off her son. And y'all, I am going to present that fairly, because that is her side. She says she is the one being attacked. She says there is a lot of evil coming at her at one time. And she has also said she is moving out of the country, which, you know, is a choice. A very interestingly timed choice, but a choice. Now, I want to take a breath and zoom out, because there is one more voice in this story that I have not given enough weight to yet, and it might be the most important one. Before Ronny died, he sat down with Tasha K for what would become his final interview. And at the end of that conversation, Tasha K looked at this young man and gave him a warning that now reads like prophecy. She told him, "I can see and feel that you are struggling between 2 worlds." She told him that social media can create what feels like a reality, but is not. She told him, God gave you a second chance for a reason. And then she said something that gives me goosebumps every single time I hear it. She said, "I almost do not even want you to find out if the baby is yours, because I feel like it is going to take you down a path, and you may end up in another bad situation messing with this girl or any girl like this." She told him, "You are a good person. You come from a good family. Do not go backwards." Y'all, she begged that man to walk away. And he could not, because he believed that baby was his son, and he believed that baby needed him. And whatever you think about Ronny Doe, whatever you think about his choices, his methods, the mall confrontation, any of it, understand this. In his final months on this earth, that man was not chasing a woman and he was not chasing a check. He was chasing a child he believed was his, in a system that kept closing doors in his face against people with more money, more lawyers, and more pull than he would ever have. And now let us talk about the person nobody in this story ever seems to put first, and that is Junior himself. Because strip away the celebrity, strip away the reality shows, strip away the internet beef, and what you are left with is a little boy who is around 3 years old, who by all appearances cannot walk and does not eat solid food, whose possible father is in the ground, whose alleged father is in jail denying him, and whose mother is at the center of a swirling cloud of suspicion that includes an open homicide investigation and accusations of a forged paternity test. That baby did not ask for any of this. He did not ask to be born into a storyline. He did not ask to be content. And the scariest thought in this entire story, the one I cannot shake, is that if even half of what the internet suspects turns out to be true, that little boy could one day grow up and learn that the man who died fighting to be his father was killed 2 days before a courtroom would have given him the answer, and that the people around his mother might know exactly why. That is not tea, y'all. That is a tragedy wearing a tea costume. And the saddest part is that every single person orbiting this child is fighting over his name, his bloodline, and his story, while the one thing he actually needs, a stable, healthy, protected childhood, keeps slipping further and further away with every new upload. And y'all, I have to double back to something Ronny himself said while he was alive, because it adds a whole other layer to why he was so worried. In one of his interviews, Ronny claimed that Chrisean had snitched on him before. He said, on camera, "That girl snitched on me when I caught a body in self-defense." Now, to be clear, Ronny always maintained that he was never the aggressor in that situation, and he fought that case as self-defense. But the point is this. In Ronny's mind, he had already lived through Chrisean Rock using the police and the courts as a weapon against him. He believed she understood the streets, understood parole conditions, understood exactly which phone calls would put a man back in a cell. He even brought up names, claiming there were connected people standing behind her, a political family in Baltimore, people with enough pull, in his words, to get him in front of whatever judge they wanted. Whether every piece of that was true or the fear of a man under pressure, it tells you the psychological state of Ronny Doe in his final months. He genuinely believed he was up against a machine, and he kept fighting anyway. Now, remember the neighbor account of that night, because the details are haunting. According to what was reported from people on that street, Ronny was sitting in his car outside his own house when another vehicle pulled up behind him. Somebody got out. He apparently did not realize they were armed until it was too late. They ran up on that car and fired again and again and again. And then came the silence. No sirens for minutes. No help for minutes. A neighbor who heard the shots waited until they thought the coast was clear before going out, tried to lay Ronny on his side, and said there was blood everywhere and it was already too late. Whoever did this, the neighbor believed, wanted it done quickly and wanted it done for good. And here is the part that sent the internet into a frenzy. In the days after the killing, a voice close to the situation claimed there had been money on Ronny's head since the Friday before he was killed. Since Friday, y'all. Meaning if that claim is true, somebody allegedly put a price on this man's life days before the mall confrontation fallout, days before the court date, and the clock ran out on him Wednesday night. I want you to hold that claim next to the Wack 100 timeline and tell me it does not make your skin crawl. And Ronny's family has not stayed quiet either. They have come out publicly implying that they believe Chrisean was behind their son losing his life. Think about the weight of that. A mother, a grandmother, aunts and sisters who spoiled this young man because he was the only boy in the bloodline, now sitting in their grief believing they know who is responsible and being unable to do anything but watch her live stream her life like nothing happened. And on the other side, Blueface has his own theory about Chrisean's behavior right now. He came out and said that Chrisean posting his private text messages and constantly dragging his name online is not random. He said, in his view, she is trying to distract from her murder investigation. His words, y'all. He said she is just trying to put other things in y'all's face. And when you line up every party in this story, the sister, the ex, the manager, the neighbor, the family, the detectives, you realize something chilling. Not one single person in Chrisean Rock's orbit has stood up and said the timeline is innocent. Not one. The closest thing to a defense is Chrisean herself, and her defense is that the dead man was a clout chaser who ran himself into a grave. And can we talk about the fact that this child has 2 grown men attached to his name, and neither one is in his life tonight? Ronny is gone. Blueface is behind bars, and by his own words, does not believe Junior is his anyway. So when Chrisean posts that little boy online, understand that every single like and view is landing on a child who has no say, no advocate, and no answers, just a last name full of questions. So here's where we land. A young man announced on a Monday that he was going to force a DNA test in court on Friday. He was dead in his driveway by Wednesday night. The woman at the center of it posted paternity results 2 days later that half the internet believes are forged. Her own sister said on camera that speaking the truth would not look good for certain people we know, then narrated the sequence, mall, paternity test, online, pow pow pow, on a major platform. The rapper she named as the father denies the child and says she called, or rather that Ronny called her, the night he died, and reminds us she is known for giving out addresses. Her manager-adjacent insiders laid out the court date timeline on camera. Detectives are now, years later, knocking on doors asking about her associates. And she is telling the world she is moving out of the country while insisting none of it has anything to do with her. Every single piece of that is on the record, y'all. Every clip I described exists. And yet, as of this recording, nobody has been charged, no definitive public DNA answer has satisfied anybody, and a little boy is growing up on livestream in the middle of it all. Now, I need to hear from y'all, because this comment section is about to be a courtroom of its own. Number 1. Do you believe the timing of that paternity test post, 2 days after Ronny's death, was a coincidence, or do you think it was a message? Number 2. When her sister said telling the truth would not look good for certain people we know, who do you think she was protecting, her sister or herself? And number 3, and this is the one I really want y'all to sit with. If Ronny Doe had made it to that Friday court date, and that DNA test came back saying Junior was his son, how different does this entire story look right now? Does Chrisean Rock ever become the version of herself we are watching today? Get in those comments, because I read every single one, and I already know this one is going to be split down the middle. And before y'all go, let me say this. Ronny Doe was 24 years old. He had a mother, a grandmother, sisters, and aunts who loved him and spoiled him because he was the only boy in that bloodline. He was somebody's whole world. And in his last months, he told anybody who would listen, I am not doing this for fame. I am doing this for Junior. And if he is not mine, I will close this chapter and move forward. That is the quote I want to end on, because whatever the truth is, whatever the investigation eventually finds, that man deserved to make it to Friday. He deserved his answer. And that baby deserved a father who was fighting that hard for him, because looking at where things stand today, he may have been the only one who ever did. That is all I have for you today, y'all. This case is still developing, detectives are still working, and the second there is another update, whether it is an arrest, a DNA bombshell, or another interview that says the quiet part out loud, you already know I am going to be right here breaking it down. And if you think this story was layered, wait until you see what is happening with the rest of that Blue Girls Club cast, because the next story I am working on connects to this one in ways you are not ready for. Make sure you are subscribed with that bell on so you do not miss it. Drop your theories in the comments. Like this video if you made it this far, and I will talk to y'all later. Stay safe, stay aware, and keep your tea hot. Peace.